Jason never believed in ghosts or curses or any of that nonsense. But when his wife died under strange circumstances and was buried with a cryptic bruise on her wrist that no one could explain, he couldn't sleep. So he did something insane. He hid a tiny camera in her coffin before the funeral. 3 nights later, the footage synced to his laptop. What he saw, not just impossible. It changed everything he thought he knew about love, betrayal, and the people he trusted most. Jason Wells had buried his wife with trembling hands and a shattered heart. The small Oregon town where they lived wasn't built for mysteries, just rain, pine trees, and quiet grief. But when Natalie died, the air around her felt unfinished, wrong. She was 35, healthy, bright, the kind of woman who could calm a room just by walking into it. And yet 3 weeks ago, she'd collapsed in their kitchen, no warning, no pain, just fell like a doll with her strings cut. Doctors called it a stroke. Jason didn't believe that. Natalie was a yoga instructor. She didn't smoke, barely drank. Her mother had lived to 90. And Jason saw something the doctors ignored, a thin bruise across her inner wrist, right where a hand might grab someone if they were resisting. He asked the coroner. They brushed it off. Post-mortem lividity, they said. Nothing unusual. But Jason had known Natalie since they were kids. He knew her expressions, her fears. And the week before she died, she had started sleeping with the lights on. When he asked why, she only whispered, "I don't want to be visited." That was not Natalie. That was someone terrified. So when it came time to close her casket at Wallace and Green Funeral Home, Jason asked for a moment alone. No one saw what he did. He reached into the velvet lining and tucked a tiny GoPro under the silk fold by her shoulder. Battery life? About 48 hours. But the model was modified. It had Wi-Fi relay. And every night, at 3 a.m., it synced footage to Jason's cloud storage. He didn't expect to catch anything. Maybe a shift in the coffin from settling, maybe rodents. He wasn't even sure what he hoped for. But on the 3rd night, his laptop lit up. Footage came through. The screen showed pitch black. Then, a faint tapping. At first, Jason thought it was outside the coffin. Raindrops. But then the camera's motion sensor engaged and the lens adjusted. Inside the coffin, Natalie's fingers moved. Just the tips. Just barely. But they moved. Jason froze. He replayed it 5 times. It wasn't a bug. It wasn't a glitch. Her right hand twitched, like a muscle firing under her skin. Then something even stranger happened. A whisper. Not clear. Not loud. Just the softest rustle of a voice, barely picked up by the mic. Jason. He slammed the laptop shut. He was shaking, breathing like someone had punched him, because he knew that voice. It wasn't panicked. It wasn't screaming. It was Natalie's voice. Calm. Like she was standing behind him. And she said his name. Only once. But that was enough to change everything. Jason didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. He sat in the dark, the only light coming from his laptop's dim glow. The footage kept playing on repeat, Natalie's fingers twitching, the faint whisper of his name. He checked the camera's internal diagnostics. No errors. No corrupted files. Battery fully charged, Wi-Fi stable. It wasn't a tech glitch. It was something else. Something alive. Or something pretending to be. The funeral director at Wallace and Green didn't know about the camera. Neither did Natalie's parents. And Jason had no intention of telling anyone, not yet. He needed to be sure. So the next night, at 2:45 a.m., Jason grabbed a flashlight, gloves, and a shovel. He parked half a mile from Rosewood Cemetery and slipped through the back fence, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. Row 6, plot 19. He counted the headstones in the dark like he'd memorized them. And when he found hers, Natalie Wells, beloved wife, 1989 to 2024, he stood there shaking. "Forgive me," he whispered, digging. He wasn't digging her up. Not yet. He just needed to check the soil, the ground, the environment. Maybe someone had tampered with her coffin. Maybe it was never really sealed. But 6 inches down, his shovel struck something soft, not roots, not earth, plastic. He knelt, scraping gently. A Ziploc bag. Sealed tight, buried just beneath the surface. Inside, a folded piece of yellowed paper, a flash drive, and a photo. The picture hit him like a slap. It was Natalie. Younger. College age. Sitting on a cabin porch in a red hoodie, a glass of wine in her hand, smiling next to 3 other people, 2 men, 1 woman. He didn't recognize them. But the background, it was familiar. He knew that porch. That lake. It was Mirror Lake Lodge, 3 hours away. The back of the photo had one sentence written in Natalie's handwriting. If I'm dead, they found me. Jason's blood ran cold. He shoved the items into his jacket and filled the hole back in. When he got home, hands still shaking, he plugged in the flash drive. There were 2 files. One was a video. Natalie sat in front of a window, clearly nervous. Her eyes were red. She kept glancing at the door. "Jason," she said into the camera. "If you're seeing this, it means I didn't get away. Please listen. I was part of something in college. Something awful. It started as a dare, but it turned into a blackmail ring. People got hurt. People disappeared." She stopped and wiped her face. "I thought I was out, but last week, I got a call from a number I haven't seen in 12 years. They said I owed them a favor. One last job." Jason stared at the screen, heart hammering. "They don't let people walk away. That's the rule. If I vanish, don't trust the cops. Don't trust my parents. And for God's sake, don't tell my sister. She's part of it." Jason backed away from the desk like it was on fire. He hadn't spoken to Natalie's sister, Rachel, since the funeral, but she'd been acting strange, overly calm, almost relieved. He needed answers. But first, he needed to know what else Natalie had buried, and why she thought her own sister might be involved. Jason had one photo, one video, one warning, and a sister-in-law who might be part of something so dark, Natalie literally took it to the grave. He didn't call Rachel. He didn't text. He knew if she was part of it, any warning would be a mistake. Instead, he followed her. She still lived in the city, in a modern glass condo Natalie had always said was too cold to be a home. Jason waited across the street in his truck, watched as Rachel left just after 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. No gym bag, no work laptop, just a thermos and a duffel. She got on Highway 6 and drove north. Jason followed at a distance. It took 3 hours before she veered off toward a forgotten forest road near Mirror Lake, the kind of road that disappears in fog and doesn't show up on GPS. He let her get ahead, kept his lights off. By 2:30 a.m., Rachel's car vanished behind a curve of pine trees. Then Jason saw it, a light flickering between the branches. He killed the engine and walked the rest of the way. There it was. The same cabin from the photo. But this time, it wasn't peaceful. It looked like something out of a nightmare. Windows boarded. A strange symbol painted in red on the door. A scent in the air, like burnt plastic and something worse. Voices inside. Muffled. Urgent. Jason crouched below the window and listened. "He's asking questions," someone said. "A man." Rachel answered. "Then we handle it. Like we handled Natalie." Jason nearly vomited. Another voice, low, raspy, almost theatrical. She panicked. That was her mistake. "He doesn't know what we buried in her." Buried in her? Jason couldn't breathe. He backed away from the cabin and nearly stepped on a loose board by the firewood pile. It creaked. Too late. Rachel burst through the door. She saw him. "Jason?" He ran. Down the hill, through the trees, nearly slipping on the wet leaves. Behind him, flashlights swung wildly and voices shouted his name, but not with concern, with rage. He made it to the truck, slammed the door, peeled off in reverse until he hit pavement again, heart slamming like a war drum. By the time he got home, dawn was breaking. He re-watched the Coffin footage, again, looking for something he'd missed. And then, he saw it. At the 9-hour, 13-minute mark, a hand, not Natalie's, reached into frame, pale, thin, carefully placing something beside her body. The camera shook, blurred. But Jason caught one word written on the small black object. Retrieve. They buried something with her. Not jewelry. Not a keepsake. A device. That's when it hit him. The strange bruise. The stiffness. The unnatural silence of the embalming team. They hadn't killed her. They'd planted something in her. Something they needed to recover. Natalie wasn't just warning him from beyond the grave. She was begging him to stop them. And Jason wasn't just grieving anymore. He was in the middle of a cold, calculated cover-up, and his wife's body was at the center of it. Jason didn't have time to think. He barely had time to breathe. By dawn, he had packed a shovel, gloves, bolt cutters, and a crowbar. He drove straight to Rosewood Cemetery. Not the back way this time. Bold. Through the front gates. Like a man who didn't care anymore if he got caught. He didn't. The place was deserted. Row 6, plot 19. Natalie's grave. He dropped to his knees, tore back the grass with his hands. Shovel hit earth fast and hard. He didn't stop to cry. Didn't pause to panic. Just dug. He had one goal, open that coffin before Rachel and the others did. An hour in, the shovel hit wood. He pried open the casket bolts, heart pounding in his throat. Then, he lifted the lid. Natalie lay there, still and too perfect, lips pale, skin waxy. But something about her expression had changed. There was strain around her mouth, like something inside her had pulled tight. Jason braced himself, and opened her blouse. And there it was. Not a scar. Not stitches. A metal port, just above her sternum. Seamless. Shiny black. Like a charging dock embedded in her flesh. His hands shook. He pulled the crowbar from his belt and tried to pry it loose. The second he touched it, her eyes twitched open. Jason screamed and fell backwards. Her pupils were rolled up. Her lips slightly parted. She didn't speak, didn't breathe, but her right hand moved again, same twitch as the footage. Only now, her mouth joined. It whispered, "They are coming." Jason dropped the crowbar and stumbled out of the hole. His limbs didn't work right. His mind felt like it had cracked open. None of this was supposed to be real. He backed into a tree, threw up, then stared at the open grave, trying to convince himself it was just grief, just madness, just guilt, until he heard tires on gravel. He turned. A black SUV crawled through the cemetery gates. No headlights. No plates. Just dark windows and a rumble that felt wrong. Jason ran. They were here. Rachel's people. He sprinted through the rows of graves and ducked behind a marble angel. Watched two men step out of the SUV, carrying duffels and rubber gloves. Then Rachel appeared. Hair pulled back. Dressed in black. Calm. Not mourning. Commanding. She opened her eyes, one of the men said, peering into the hole. Rachel didn't react. "She's not dead," he added. Rachel knelt at the edge of the grave and stared at Natalie's body. "She will be soon." Jason's mouth went dry. They weren't just here to retrieve the device. They were here to finish what they started. He waited for his chance. When Rachel turned to give orders, Jason bolted toward the rear of the cemetery and ducked under the maintenance shed. His phone buzzed. He checked it, expecting junk. Instead, a new file had auto-synced from the Coffin camera. From just 10 minutes ago. Jason hit play. The footage showed Rachel leaning into the coffin. Natalie's lips moved again. This time the MIC caught it clearly. "Jason knows." Rachel smiled, then whispered back, "Then Jason dies too." Jason didn't stop running. He tore through the trees behind the cemetery until his legs gave out and he collapsed on the cold ground. His heart felt like it might split. His mind? Already in pieces. But he had the footage, the Coffin cam's latest file. Natalie's whisper, "Jason knows." Rachel's reply, "Then Jason dies too." This wasn't a coincidence. It was a hunt, and he was prey. He drove 4 towns over and checked into a cheap motel under a fake name, took his laptop out, plugged in the camera's storage directly this time. There were files the autosync hadn't pulled. One was marked, failsafe_message.move. He opened it. Natalie's face filled the screen. Not dead. Not panicked. Determined. "Jason. If this is playing, they tried to kill me. Or maybe they think they succeeded. But what they don't know is I planned for this." She looked straight into the camera like she could see through time, into his eyes. "The device they implanted in me, it's not just a tracker. It's a recorder. And it's been transmitting every meeting, every voice, every name since the night they approached me again. I let them do it, Jason. I had to. It was the only way to expose them." Jason's breath caught. "You're the only one who can end this. I know you're scared. I know you're grieving. But this isn't just about me anymore. It never was. These people, they blackmail senators, police chiefs, tech billionaires. You name it." She leaned closer. Her voice dropped. "The file you need is hidden inside the Coffin camera itself. Not the footage, the firmware. Plug it into a forensic decryptor. The code is disguised as an old timestamp. That's the leak. That's the proof. Send it to the press. All of it." She paused. "And Jason, if I'm gone, don't let them bury the real me. You knew who I was. Don't let this be the only story they tell about me." The screen cut to black. Jason stared at the wall. Hours passed. He didn't sleep. Just sat with that message looping in his head. By dawn, he made his decision. He drove to Portland and found someone who owed him a favor, an old friend who worked IT security for a local newspaper. The guy decrypted the firmware in 20 minutes. His hands were shaking by the end. The files included voice recordings, meeting logs, bank statements, even names of judges and doctors paid to falsify death records. Some of the people listed had been deceased for years, but their accounts were still active, still sending money. One folder was labeled Project Revive. Inside, a single document, Test Subject 7, Natalie Wells. Implanted, the 3rd of February 24. Activation date, TBD. Status, passive observation. Partner unaware of participation. Jason dropped the folder. Partner unaware. They had done this before she died. The stroke? The sudden collapse? It wasn't an accident. It was protocol. Natalie didn't just die. She was used. He leaked everything. It took 2 days for the media to catch up. But once it broke, it erupted. Journalists from every coast picked up the story. Whistleblowers stepped forward. And one by one, names fell. Arrests. Resignations. Secret organizations collapsing under their own weight. Rachel? Gone. Vanished. Never arrested. Never seen again. Jason never found her. But he kept the Coffin footage. And sometimes, when the guilt got too heavy, he'd watch the final moments, the twitch of her hand, the whisper of his name, just to remind himself. She saved him. Even in death, she saved him. And somewhere deep in a quiet forest, the Coffin remains sealed under earth and roots. Camera long dead. But inside it lies the body of a woman who outsmarted them all. And whispered her truth into the silence. END.